You're all right, Juliette Lewis. You're all right.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Jump is an original series from MailChimp, and I'm your host, Shirley Manson. It's produced by Lyra Smith in partnership with Little Everywhere. Executive produced by Dan Gallucci, Jane Marie, and
MailChimp presents.
In 1995, Alanis Morissette released the album Jagged Little Pill to both critical and commercial acclaim. It went on to become one of the best-selling albums of all time, selling 33 million copies to date. The album spawned 3 #1 singles, 2 more in the top 10, 9 Grammy nominations, 5 Grammy wins, including Album of the Year, and more than anything else, the songs of Jagged Little Pill became anthems of empowerment across the world. And she did all of this when she was just 19 years old. Very few people could handle the pressure that comes with that much and that kind of attention. generation. Even fewer could do it before they reached 20 years old. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Alanis about the lead single and tone-setting anthem from Jagged Little Pill, You've Got to Know. I'm Shirley Manson, and this is The Jump. I want to start with saying congratulations on a ridiculous career. I haven't seen you in 20 years, and here we both are, and what a miracle, and a testimony to hard work.
Yes.
So, of course, we're here to talk about one specific song, and you picked You Ought to Know from your third studio album, which blew my mind because when the world met you, this was actually your third record, right?
I had a single out. I had a record company when I was 10 years old because nobody wanted to sign kids back in the day. Now they're fine with it apparently.
Yeah, no shit.
Now they seek you out in the uterus. So basically, I had a record out. I'd done, I guess, at this point I could call it an EP when I was 10, and then 2 records in Canada. I knew that would have required me to leave. I just wasn't up for that. So I said no. Yeah, and then I was dropped from MCA Records after I guess I was 18 because I was starting to write songs that were less compatible, shall we say, with the records that I'd had in my teen years, and a little more autobiographical, heaven forbid, not rhyming. And so I was writing all these songs, and the last videos that I did with MCA, they were mortified because there were snakes in the video, and it was risky. And they both, 2 people came up to me after they saw the video at Canada's equivalent of MTV, and they said, we don't think where you're going is the way to go, and you should really keep doing what the people you've worked with as a teenager. I think you should do that. I was like, oh jeez. and then not long after, MCA said, we can't really continue on this journey with you. They didn't say this directly, but basically it was, we really think you're done.
And that must have been pretty devastating, getting dropped to 18 years old.
In a way, it wasn't because of what was going on. Because every meeting I went to, basically what I was presenting was being met with resistance and being met with, we don't think this is a good idea, and what are you talking about? And the collaborators I was working with at the time, whether they were aware of it or not, I think there was just fear of some of the content that I wanted to write. There was a lot of questioning around whether I was a writer, and so for me, there was an emancipation a little bit when I was dropped. It was devastating because rejection sucks, but it was also not devastating. It was pretty liberating, and I thought, finally, I can start from scratch with a clean slate.
What happened, boy?
So you had a good working relationship with Glenn Ballard, the producer of You Ought to Know.
Yes, and collaborator. So yeah, basically I was starting to write with different people in Canada and in Los Angeles, but I wasn't really precious during the songwriting process, although once I met Glenn Ballard and we started writing together, I was blown away at the ease. Not so much that it was an effortless experience of writing You Ought to Know or writing the song Little Pill, but there was no resistance, basically. Anything that I wanted to write was really welcome, but the flame was fanned. It was great.
word Alanis? Rejection of the future Alanis.
Right.
If that makes any
Great
sense.
question. Yeah, I love it. Only an artist would ask that. It was devastation filtered through fire. I'm always moved by how multitudinous we are. You know, whenever I ask my kids how they're doing, you know, they'll say 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 feelings. Because we're aware, you know, I'm sort of excited, but I'm also a little bit depressed under that. And I'm also really, you know. So, with You Ought to Know, it was pure devastation. I mean, I was horrified. Combined with my having learned from the patriarchy, basically taught by just modeling and watching the world that so many of us were terrified of being sad, broken, and, you know, males especially, men in my family were, anytime they felt sad or scared, they would just filter it through anger. You know, it's like anger was the go-to. If you're sad, you're angry. If you're scared, you're angry. If you're vulnerable, you're angry. So with You Ought to Know, you know, everyone quickly sort of connected with the anger and the empowerment, and certainly it's in there, but so is the opposite of that. So is deep sadness and profound disempowerment. I was watching One Addiction issues, you know, 15 years, 20 years ago, so I was still mired in these confusing messages about what hetero relationships even were supposed to be, and I was a youngin', you know, still figuring it out.
I think it's fair to say there's not previous to this record, this whole record of Here's the Album, but I think this song specifically, there hadn't been a lot of rageful expression from the female standpoint in popular music. Is that fair to say?
I mean, my experience was, you know, there was the Sinead O'Connor and Tori Amos. There were so many women that were raped, you know, and they were everything, you know. So when people think, oh, that's a really good record, first of all, I'm flattered, because if someone's going to one-dimensionalize me and reduce me to one thing, I'll take it. So it's just so one-dimensionalizing. Even the hypersexualizing of women in music and videos and everything, I'm just like, it's fine. Just know that that's 1/1,000,000 of her.
Yeah. But the expression of anger is relatively unusual.
Yes, I do want to say yes to that too. It's not the norm. I mean, the norm is pretty much
around here.
infatuation songs. You know, when you're working through something with some grist, then a song is a great thing to do for me anyway. But yeah, anger and rage. If you're a woman body, if you identify as a woman, if you're alive in this time, certainly alive in 1994. If you weren't angry, you weren't paying attention. You know, and in some ways, I was super checked out about the degree of how patriarchy was affecting me, to the point where people would say after You Ought to Know was released, like, how do you feel about being, you know, viewed as this super empowered woman? And it was confusing to me, because I thought, well, I am empowered, and aren't women empowered? But I was clueless about the degree to which patriarchy was, you know, basically trying to choke women. And when You Ought to Know was first brought to the radio stations, their response was, yeah, we can't play this. We have our quota of one woman. We're already playing Sinead, so sorry, we can't play this. Yeah. So there was a big rejection to playing You Ought to Know at the beginning before K-Rock played it, because of their quota. They wanted to keep their female artist quota down, which is mortifying.
Nice. Get 'em all.
There was a lot of taboo
Bleep that out.
covered in the lyrics of the song, and that we hadn't yet really
Bleep it out. That's awesome.
exposed to. You know, when we talk
Usually
about
they
Tory or
censor
you talk
stuff
about
as the
Sinead,
podcast.
but yes, they were well versed in their own fury, but they weren't very explicit. And I mean, it seems so silly to call it explicit.
No, but that's the right word, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
It hit me at the time as being really like, wow. I remember just going, oh, he's so smart. Like I was
focused above all else on these lyrics. I can remember it to this day on MTV, watching it upstairs of Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin. I was making our own debut record and watching you, perform this song, and I was struck by the video, but more than anything, it was the lyrics I honed into, and I was like, this is really smart. She's like tuning into something that needs to be said at this very moment. And it's the right time.
Wow, yeah, I did feel like there was a wave happening, whether we call it the feminist wave or women being honest about their internal experience or whatever was happening. It was happening, and I felt like this huge wave was coming, and someone said, "Who's gonna ride it?" And I just put my hand up. I was like, "I'll do it." I am that woman who puts my hand up before I even hear what the frickin' request is.
It really is. It's like a phenomenal moment in musical history, I think.
Yes.
And you have gone on to, sell 30 million copies of Jagged Little Pill, which I think is the biggest debut album of all time.
Yeah, I don't know
in the history
of the galaxy.
I mean, fucking hell, girl, that's insane.
So, tell me where you were when you wrote this song, this exact song.
So my journal was full when I was in Toronto. I basically, to this day, I won't tell anyone where, but I have cabinets and cabinets full of journals. So I remember crying in my room and then looking at the journal that was just teeming with information of all my crushes or whatever. And I remember walking downstairs and throwing it in the fire, thinking that, this decision I was making of being willing to be in the public eye was going to be really vulnerable. And if anyone really knew, how vulnerable or how, betrayed I felt or whatever, that somehow would be the end. And of course the poetry is that it was the beginning telling these stories,
So you're saying these lyrics for You Ought to Know were from a journal?
So there's probably two, I had a whole page full that was what I pulled from when we started writing You Ought to Know. Telling the stories, especially You Ought to Know, not everyone, but a lot of assumptions around that song being a song intended to fuel revenge, And for me, I love revenge fantasy. I think we have to really, really, really dream it and visualize the revenge movement, or it just gets stuck in our bodies. But, I'm not the woman that says, oh yeah, then go do that.
No. Did you automatically think, this is going to be a single? This is a standout here?
I did, because I loved it so much. There were a lot of people who wanted Hand in My Pocket or Ironic. I didn't even want the song Ironic on my record.
That shows you what you know.
Yeah, exactly. I loved it, and I wanted it to be the first single, and I kind of stood by that for a while. We were a little ahead of the game because we weren't anywhere near releasing it yet, but I just remember saying to myself, not even to Glenn, that I would love to have that song out first because, and this is the patriarchal, because, the old thing of you only have one opportunity for a first impression. Okay, sort of. But my whole thought is, I had a sense with my model version of fame and the vicissitudes of it in my teen years, once someone identifies, or once an audience once they identify you, it's really hard to wiggle out of that. And that was my experience as a teenager. So I thought, whatever song comes out first, I don't want to have to wiggle out of that for the rest of my life. And that meant, starting with anger and starting with a sense of power or passion was the perfect place for me to start, because it's such a big part of who I was. That people were eventually going to find out that I was insecure and vulnerable and love addicted and codependent. They're going to find all that out later. But what a great way to start by saying, even though I am all these vulnerable things, I'm still fire. That's it. question.
Lots of love to you and your beautiful family.
Oh, thank you. You too, Shirley.
The Jump is hosted by me, Shirley Manson, and is produced by Dan Gallucci. The Jump is an original
Awesome
series from
fucking
MailChimp,
podcast. I love
produced
it.
in partnership with the Delivery
That was
Web.
Alanis Morissette.
Executive producers. The Jump
Heard
is
that on-
mixed by
heard it
Mike
on
Richter.
Rena today,
Original
and she
music
was
composed
talking
by
about it.
Rishikesh Hirway. And a very special
Podcast.
thanks goes to our wonderful booker, Mara Davis.
MailChimp presents.
It's a good map.
The Jump is a podcast where I, Shirley Ann Manson, sit down with musicians and talk about the one song that changed everything. When the legend, that is George Clinton, got out of his car on the day of this interview, he looked like a magnificent cartoon of a hero, and it all seemed completely natural. George and I talked about everything from him growing up in the shadow of Motown to how he constructed the band and the songs that he eventually built amongst the absolute legends of modern music. It was a magical experience, and I absolutely loved every minute of him. He is so sharp, and so engaging, and so humble. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the King of Funk, Mr. George Clinton. George Clinton, thank you so much for sitting down. I'm love to deep dive across in all your splendor.
Don't worry about it.
You do not disappoint, let's leave it at that.
Okay, good. I'm glad I do that. And you know, that sounded like Bobby Gillespie.
I love the fact
That's what we used to have understanding each other, but we communicated very well.
Well, your hearts are gorgeous. I was listening to your music and I'm like, this is spiritual music. It's motivational. It's reaching for something.
Well, that was the 60s. It was all about Khalil Gibran and the prophet and all of that lofty thinking. That was it. And it's real. Commercials and things take over and pretty much run shit. I always felt that we evolve and that stuff comes in handy. And if you can keep a taste of it in the insanity that's going on, you get, it's like prayers.
Sure.
It's like
So
church.
was this a deliberate choice? Like you wanted
Well,
this?
it's my version of church or whatever you would.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go to church to be no gospel. It was about being, dreaming. It was really real. I'm actually think about the money until really late. I got to leave some of my heirs and all of that. But I started taking business and getting the copyright issues and all that stuff. Nothing that mattered to me was just getting the spaceship off the ground and getting it out there. I can come back and clean it up later. I always thought.
Did you feel like a hippie?
I wanted to be. By the time we got there, when he was 24, he was already too old.
So did you feel like a square?
Not a square, because we felt hipper than all of them. We saw what they was doing, reaching for. But we had to sneak into it. You can't just come in first and think you know everything. Because then you are a square.
But you are a rebel, right?
Yeah, rebels, yeah. That's why we put on stuff. Y'all ain't really hippie. We gonna show you how to be hippies for real. Put on a diaper, put on a sheet.
And we're aware that you're freaking people out.
Yeah, not the club. I mean, that was part of it. And I ended up looking at myself 50 years later. You still a hippie.
Yeah. So the purpose of this show is to talk about a moment in an artist's creative life where you're taken somewhere different by your own creativity, your own sort of look into what you can do and what's possible. And you have picked Chocolate City. Where were you in your life when you wrote Chocolate City?
But the DC song was right here in DC. I was in Detroit during that time. We done Up or the Downstroke, and that was okay. We can get into R&B like James Brown or like Sly Stone. But with the Chocolate City, the subject matter was someplace that you never pictured blacks before. Chocolate City, which was DC, and the people, you know, the Richard Pryor, Aretha Franklin, all the current people that was happening at that time. Yeah, imagine them in the White House today, what the house would be like. Richard Pryor, Minister of Education, Stevie Wonder, Secretary of Finance, and Miss Aretha Franklin, the First Lady. Are you out there, Susie? It's not like a DJ talking. We had popular DJs back then.
It's a bot.
The Frankie Crockers and the Fat Daddies in Baltimore, Washington. And DJs was like a second mayor. They could call the community out. They could get everybody together. There are 7 technology wonders of the world. You are about to be introduced by the 8th, the young man who has become a legend of his own time. Suddenly, Agent 007. It's the Frankie Crocker Show.
Do it, Frankie. Do it to it.
This guy over there has a scream.
And by the time I got to mothership, they started cutting down on DJs talking. And DJs started showing up in the clubs. That became the radio. And it wasn't but a few, 2 or 3 years later, before they actually started making records. Talking over somebody else's record.
Is that how you wrote Chocolate City? Like, on a track? Or
Yeah. Sometimes I'd talk while they was cutting. And I left it on there, because I did most of it on the fly. And I just left it on there. But
It's all improvised?
yeah, most of that, yeah. I knew the topic, the subject matter. So it was easy to just talk shit over time. Especially when you just get into the flow of it. It's almost like a preacher. W-E-F-U-N-K, P-Funk. The extraterrestrial. It was the funky music, P-Funk, uncut funk, the bomb. Coming to you directly from the top of the chocolate Milky Way. 500,000 kilowatts of P-Funk power. Kick back, dig, while we do it to you in your ear hole. I'm known as Lollipop. Alias the bald head sucker. And my motto is, make my funk the P-Funk. Uncut, don't step on my funk, it's the bomb.
Well, what's happening, CC? They still call it the White House, but that's a temporary condition. Can you dig it, CC? See, each is reach, and if I don't copy, ain't mine to have. But I'll be reaching first, because I love you.
There's a lot of chocolate cities all around. We got Newark, we got Gap. Somebody told me we got LA. We're working on Atlanta. You're the capital.
When you finished the track, did you know it was special?
Oh, yeah. But then we had got out of trying to make singles. We came from that rock
There
and roll
goes one.
of albums.
They
Like
still
jazz
have
album,
5,
gospel
man.
album, and rock and roll. Jimi Hendrix never hit singles. His whole album was hit. His licks was hit off each song. So when you did it like that, you didn't have to be in that day-to-day competition with who's on the chart, who's not on the chart. They called it underground.
So what did the record company do when you presented it?
But we had just got to a company called Casablanca Records, which was Neil Bogart. Yeah. Donna Summers, the Village people. So he put all the together to promote it. All the pop stations loved it. So when he got us, I told him we got a person ready to tear the roof off. You got to give me the money, buy me a spaceship. Once he got the spaceship, he was the best prop. Cause now I'm able.
Once you got the spaceship.
He gave me the finance. Instead of giving me my royalties, he gave me the money. And I had the spaceship built in New York on Broadway where they would do Broadway plays. The spaceship became one big promotion. So I finally got with somebody to promote the way that
You saw it.
I saw, especially when doing something strange.
Was Bernie Worrell your co-writer with Chocolate City?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bernie Worrell and Ray Gucci.
And how did that work?
But
Say, play this,
I
try
wrote most
that.
of the lyrics. You
And
know.
you sing them, right?
And I sang them pretty much back then. And that was usually the songwriter. But I cherish, the band so much that I want them to be a part of it. If they participated and they became like the foundation of the song, most musicians, you play it for the session and they expect them to contribute what they do to get the next session. But I think things special. They should get part of the song. We can all be, even if I did it or you did it, the three of us was partners. Lucy, Bernie, myself, on the song we did together.
Did you have a vision, or like you say, you just were in the
I just knew that was going where he was just. My job was just to stay out of the way of the track. I could talk shit, but just don't get in the way of the track. And Chocolate City was that one I could actually talk some really profound stuff. Really was that with CC, talk and just do that, but stay out of the way.
Hey, oh, the bot got up. 2 a.m. They still have 5. They didn't get 1 yet.
When you got the valley, are you up for the downstroke, CC? Are you with me out there?
And what I
Well, I'm having fun no matter what the hell's going on here.
And you were a writer from
Yeah,
time, right? Staff
yeah,
writer.
yeah. So coming out of that, seeing all those writers,
What was that
and
noise?
producers, that was to me was the best school of music that
It's
ever
another
was.
bot. Oh, somebody jumped over a bot, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
See, this
That was
blows my
another
mind that
bot.
you're so
I
accomplished,
killed
and
one.
yet you don't actually play anything.
I pay attention to what each one of them do.
So of course,
So,
I mean,
so it's basically like a producer, a director, arranger. I'm just equipped with who can do what, and I bring those elements together with each other. And a lot of the ones I do, get together themselves with each other, because they just going the opposite way, but they would come together for me. Our band was like our little brothers. We had taught them in the neighborhood community center. They drums and guitars when they first picked them up. So Billy Nelson he was a guitar player first. He didn't know what a guitar was. He had to get one. He'd take it apart. He couldn't even put it together again. But by the time he got on the road, he was the first musician. By the time he get back home, he got his friend Eddie Hazel. And so these ran in and out of the barbershop all the while we was there. But now we had a little band. All they had to play was the chords, basically. It's like Duke Ellington, George Duke, Frank Zappa. They brought people together. The same thing is happening now with hip hop. They do features on each other's record. When I did that, I tried to have different musicians all in the same thing.
and a lot of positivity in that,
It's always fun.
right?
It's got to be fun. And by having those young kids in the band, that was a generation behind them. I realized it was always about what we think. Get somebody to influence you from the generation behind what you just did. Once it was Eddie, Billy, and Tiki and all them, the next set was their little brothers, Gary Scheider, Cornell Mawson. They were all from the same city, so Plainfield, New Jersey. So we would always reach back, and they were kids, that sparked something new in us.
Where does all this enthusiasm come from? Were you taught to be enthusiastic? Did you practice being enthusiastic? I mean, you are an enthusiast. It's dripping out of you in every way.
I don't know, I think just liking what you're doing in music and seeing so many good people doing it, I'm never satisfied. As soon as I hear somebody doing what you say, now I feel like I ain't done nothing. I'm ready to start over again.
Do you throughout your career, it seems to me, well, you're incredibly ambitious. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Still?
I'm a Leo. Yeah, no.
Explains everything.
No, you got to have an ego, but you got to know when to tell it to go sit down.
But you obviously sit on your ego a lot because you're so generous to others.
I know, yeah, but I got one, believe me.
You tough to it.
I have to tell myself, I can go in the bathroom, I make fun of it. I can tell myself in the bathroom, you're bad, you're the greatest, but I make sure I'm in the bathroom so I can flush that shit before I leave. Because there's somebody out there waiting to tell you you ain't shit. You're the cow.
Example, because I wasn't familiar really with the term Afrofuturism. Would this be an example?
We didn't even call it that then.
But would you call it that?
Yes, that was ours. That belonged to us. Afrofuturism. People have been doing it. A lot of the jazz fusion things have been doing it. Then Sun Ra was out there. So Jimi Hendrix lived in outer space, as far as I was concerned. So it wasn't no futurism. It was present.
Are you proud of what you've done? I mean, not many people can say that they basically were one of three or four people who created a genre of music.
Oh, yeah. Now, we knew we was going to do something.
Something that big, though?
Yeah, because Motown was doing that. I also worked in New York. I worked on the Brill Building. So I had a chance to see the New York version, the Phil Spectors, the Tokens, and all of the New York version of Carole King, Don Kirshner. I seen from the New York side of it. Then you see the stats. You know all the possibilities of what can happen. You know the business. Just as much as you have the greatest musicians in the world. If they never heard it or promoted, nobody never know about it. And we pride ourselves, we want to be the continuation of Motown. Because we did it. We wanted to let them know we had that other side that they didn't have. They was slick, and we could have been the other side of the music, flipped to the other side of it. And flipped to being funky.
Wild.
You know, wild. And with the theory that we're not trying to get it correct as much as we just want to be so interesting.
Oof, there's the buck.
Then Beatles and all of that. We was going to be all of that.
So what's next? What do you do? Like, I need to do this now. Well, I've got the thing.
Well, I'm doing it right now. The last two albums that we put out, Shake the Gate, and then Medicaid Fraud Dog, we sell out everywhere we go now. And those two records, people, again, we're underground. It's like Maggot Brain. It's never a hit record, but it's standard.
Yeah. So you're not quitting?
Not for a minute.
Good.
Yeah, I'm talking about a little longer. You know, my new slogan is, it was easy to crack when it is to quit the road.
And then finally, I just want to congratulate you on your Lifetime Achievement Award that you're about to be gifted next year. Long overdue, right?
Yeah, they just gave it to you the other day.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute thrill.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. The Jump is an original series from MailChimp, and I'm your host, Shirley Manson. It's produced by Lyra Smith in partnership with Little Everywhere. Executive produced by Dan Kitchener, Jane Lee, and Rishikesh Hirway. Original music composed by Rishikesh Hirway.
MailChimp presents.
The Jump is a podcast where I, Shirley Ann Manson, sit down with musicians and talk about the one song that changed everything. Meeting Sharon Van for the very first time was for me a complete delight.
full of surprises and so much grace. It was a real pleasure talking to her about everything she's got going on her.
That's an awesome podcast. Jump over my chair a bit.